At or any SF guy is not 100% dedicated to the Constitution, not one. So when you see things that happen that are anti-constitutional or against the Constitution, that's why that Second Amendment's in there. And I think all those guys, all of us kind of look at it that way. That's why there is a Second Amendment.
Right.
We're supposed to have guns because when a tyrannical government gets off track, we help it put it back on line, right? Now, I'm not advocating any of that. Theoretically, that's kind of the way it works. And that's the mentality for a lot of us.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Kazaza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL. Today's guest, for those of you that are not on YouTube and that can't see it, is my first in-person guest, which I'm super, super excited about. We met here in South Carolina at a chamber event, and he's just amazing, and I had to get him on the show. He's really, I'm hyping it up because he's going to live up to the hype, but he's great. He's just really funny. Great storyteller. It keeps me engaged. And I said, you know what? He's going to be perfect for the show. He's a Green Beret. He has an incredible story that we're just going to get right into. It's a really interesting story. He kind of did everything almost backwards than normal. So definitely a great guest to have on the show. I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Kelly. Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited. Let's just dive right into your whole Green Beret experience. Did you know that you wanted to be Green Beret? Did you know about Special Forces?
Oh, yeah, I was so my uncle in Wheaton, Maryland, had a bar. Of course, because we're Irish Catholic, there's got to be at least one bar in the family somewhere. So my Uncle Jim had a bar, and there was this, I was a little boy. I kind of grew up in there, so probably at 4 or 5. And there was this SF guy that always came in there. He came in there prior to his deployments. Now, I'd only seen him the one time, and he was a bad dude. He was just like awesome. He was like what you expect a Green Beret to look like. And I didn't know what the hell one was at the time. And but he was going back over to Vietnam for like his 4th or 5th rotation, and he never came back again. Now, I don't know if he ever came back to this day. He may have survived, but I never saw him back in the bar again.
Okay.
So he just kind of fell off the map, which means he probably may not have come back, especially at that time, looking early 70s and the stuff that was going on with SF at the time. So I assumed that that's what happened. So that kind of sparked it with me. But the only thing I've ever wanted to be since the age of 6 was a Green Beret. So,
wow.
Ever since, that's what got me, that's how I finished high school, because I hated high school. I would have dropped out if I could, But yeah, so that's what kind of kept me on the straight and narrow, kept me away from a lot of things, kept me away from some things that, could have put that into question,
Wow. So when you graduated, you just signed right up.
Yeah, Roger. So what happened is, so at the time, this is 1984, I was 17 and a half. I signed into the National Guard,
Okay.
The Army National Guard in Maryland, which had Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20 Special Forces Group. So I got to join them. And so I was still in high school and went through their NQP program, which is non-qualified personnel, where basically you kind of get abused. It's to prep you for the Q course. So you did a lot of land nav, a lot of road marching, a lot of getting yelled at and stuff like that.
No, what? Let me just stop 1 second. As you knew at 6 years old, this is what you wanted to do. Were you training throughout your time of growing up?
Yeah, I stayed in sports. We'd do, like, at the time, you got to figure this is the 70s and early 80s, so karate was a big thing then. So I'd hit all the karate stuff. Not for long. It's not like I ever
came out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like I ever belted out and anything like that. But you went into that to do some of that stuff. And I got in a lot of trouble in high school. I got into a lot of fights, and I used to skip school and things like that. But I didn't do anything that was horrendous. And I generally stayed in shape. So not anything special. I'll cut to the chase right now, man. I am absolutely an average SF guy. There was nothing super special about me at all, except maybe my ability to jackass around and say stupid shit. But that's about it. Otherwise, I was very average. So in preparation for that time, getting into the Q course or going into SF, starting off with the Guard, there were a lot of things I was afraid of. I was terrified of heights. My first time doing on a rappel tower, I almost threw up. I couldn't believe I was a bit of a bitch. I'm sorry if that language isn't too bad for you guys, but yeah. So there were certain things I was weak at, but road marching, being able to ruck march, being able to carry heavy shit and move it around, I was always good at that.
Well, okay, so how did you get over that fear? Because, like, you jump out of planes,
I think you do it enough times. It's not like, okay, so I went to airborne school. I went to airborne school in 85. And it was easy then, too. So don't let anybody kid you. It was not a hard school when I went through. But before I jumped, that very first jump, I woke up about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I threw up for about an hour. And then I went, because I was, like I said, I was terrified of heights. And then, but once that first time you go out of the bird, it's not really a height issue. Standing on the edge of a building is a sense of heights. Jumping out of an aircraft, it wasn't anything like that, for me at least. For some people it was, I imagine, but for me, I didn't have any issues with it.
What did you feel it was like? How do you compare like looking over a building and then jumping out of a plane?
Well, I think anybody who stood over on a high edge and looked over, you kind of get that little vertigo type thing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you get that feeling in your gut.
You don't have to be scared of heights. You just stomach drop.
And it's a normal thing. Once you realize that you're not scared of heights, then you're probably a moron. So you should be scared of heights because heights will kill you if you fall off of them. So so it's not like, it's not something, you just got used to it. You do it so often, and you get used to repelling and doing all that kind of stuff, and you just kind of, because repelling actually gave me more of a sense of falling than anything else. And trusting the equipment. Took me a little while to trust the equipment. I didn't like that too much. But then after a while,
I'm way too trusting. Like when we when I rappelled down the side of a castle. I think it was like in Wales or something. Oh, cool. And I was in 16, and you just go back. And for me, it was like nothing. But when I had to do I think this one was in Australia. They had to they put you 75 feet in the air, and then you pull a rope swing, and then you drop, and then you go. That freaked me out because this rope is catching me, know. But the rappelling thing, I was I trusted it too much. I'm like, oh, this feels secure. I didn't even think of
That's a good thing. It's good. It's good to trust your equipment because at that point it's too late anyway. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail.
Did you have any of that?
What?
Ever of a failure of equipment from jumping? Or...
The closest I ever came to was I was on my 20th jump in Halo school, and this was when it was out of Yuma. It still is. And it was a daytime jump with combat equipment and oxygen. First time jumping oxygen. And when I pulled my chute, it didn't pop out. And so when I looked back and there was nothing there, I was like, oh shit, what are my emergency procedures? It's one of those. And I looked back again, I kind of hit my pack tray, and the drogue chute popped out, caught air, and then it opened up. So that was the closest I've ever had to any kind of equipment malfunction when it came to anything dealing with airborne activities or repelling or any of that stuff. Although we did try using a grappling hook out at Fort Bragg, out at the Mount City. And it's one of the, any of you guys from Fort Bragg, you'll understand is it's the tallest building on the farthest corner from when you enter the range. And we were messing around because the worst thing you can do is have an SF guy with nothing to do and equipment to screw around with, because that's when people get hurt and dumb things happen. So we're out there, we got these grappling hooks, and this is just prior to 9/11. So we're swinging around, throwing it up and trying to get it hooked over the top. And we finally did, because it took some time. And then he's throwing it up and then everybody's running away because out of this, 10-pound thing's coming down about to hit somebody. So finally we got it to hook up, and then we're like, well, we're going to try climbing it, man, see if it'll work. And I did it, and I got about maybe 10 feet in the air, and then it slipped. So I fell down, landed on my back, and then immediately scurried over to the left because that grappling hook came straight down. And hit right there.
My God.
Yeah, it was no big deal. It's typical dumb, fun stuff that, we do.
Yeah, I hear that when I get some guests on the show and they talk some of the stuff that they say. It's, it's funny.
Yeah, because we're all kind of cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
So you can have guys maybe an 18 Delta and really smart and introverted, and you have an 18 Bravo that's extroverted that maybe, banging rocks together or whatever. But we all have the same sense of, I think, risk aversion, or not risk aversion, a lack of aversion to risk. So you'll do more dumb things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're dumb things. I'd say you're just testing the boundaries of what you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
That's the best way I say it to my wife. So it sounds much smarter,
It does.
But the realization is you put a bunch of SF guys on a range and they don't have structure, something they're doing, training that they're doing, they're going to find some way to probably get in trouble. And I imagine the SEALs are the same way. I can't imagine anybody outside of special operations not doing that.
So you went Green Beret, and now during that time, was it a pipeline where you went and then you chose 18 Delta?
I did not choose 18.
You didn't choose? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Not your choice.
Oh. So at the time, in the mid-'80s, you had a big drawdown after Vietnam that we still felt in place all the way into the early 80s. And then when Reagan took over and started really pumping money into the military, and particularly special operations, that's when the Q Corps started, I think, from what I recall, started to get more, probably more, I don't want to say professionally run, but I think it was more structured, maybe.
Okay.
And so at that time there wasn't a pipeline. You showed up at the Q course, you went to phase 1. It was phase 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And if you're going to medic course, 18 Delta course, you went to 300 F1 in Texas, Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And then you came back to Bragg and did or then you did phase 1, depending on what year you went through. I hate to make this sound confusing. So 18 Delta is the problem you have with the medics was, at the time, and it's probably still the same way, is that you'd have a guy who was academically good enough to make it to the 18 Delta course. And so they started sending guys to 300 F1 first down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, because that was the biggest washout area for it. So we figure if you're going to fail out, you're going to fail out here. Well, that's 6 months down there at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, where the ratio of females to males is about 5 or 6 to 1. And then you got all these SF guys running around getting in trouble, which is exactly what I did, maybe the 18 Bravo that I am today. You would go to that first, and then you go to phase 1. Well, I was in the first crop of guys in 1986 that started going to phase 1 first, and then going to 300 F1. Because then their theory, I think, at least I was told, I was a private, so I didn't know it. I was 19, man. I mean, I did what I was told, so it's not like I was a big thinker. So, but what I was told is that they were losing so many people from phase 1 that were 300 F1 qualified that they were like, well, we'll just put it back to phase 1 again and then send it to 300 F1. They're always screwing around the Q course to this day. Anybody who went through last year, if you went through now, it's probably different. They change things around. It's the same kind of crap that's going to happen, but then they move the order around. Maybe somebody needs a bullet for an OER, an officer evaluation report or something like that. Their mark on the Q course, I don't know. But they're always messing with it, and they always have.
Interesting. So when going this route that you went and then you failed the 18 Delta course, now when did you get the opportunity to then choose a different route? Because like it wasn't like you failed and it's like I had to go like back to just basic, where it was like you didn't have to go active duty. You were able to go back to.
I went back to my guard unit, so I went back to Maryland.
Okay.
I was on orders for a little while and did some National Guard stuff there, and went to college and worked jobs and all that kind of crap. You're basically a civilian and you're doing a 1 week and a month of thing, and they look at you like you're a dirtbag because you failed out, and it's And you, to be honest, if you're sending a 19-year-old to 18 Delta course, you're probably making a mistake. I mean, I didn't have the maturity at the time. It's not like I was stupid. I was just like, you're going to run around and chase girls and go get drunk. And I had a Cadillac Eldorado at the time, man. So I was bartending at night. I was doing all the stuff you weren't supposed to do.
But yeah. I mean, so in a way, okay. When did you fail out? Like, how far along were you?
I was in the Q course. So I went to phase 1. And I was held up after the end of phase 1. I was held there before phase 1 started. I got down to Fort Bragg, and I was kind of like, you're an outer training guy. You haven't started because the way the timing for when the course starts. So I sat there and we worked on buildings out of Camp McCall. You did slave labor is basically what it was. You were on the slave market. That's what they called it.
Yeah.
So every morning you showed up, and they would send you out to some place to do some menial work. Like me, I cut the grass in front of the Puzzle Palace at Bragg, the headquarters building, 3 days in a row. Grass doesn't grow that fast down there. But yet I'm out there for 6 hours just going back and forth, cutting the grass. And Sergeant Major would come by and check on you, make sure you're not, if you look like shit, they'd come and say something to you, which says something to me all the time. And then I went to phase 1, finished that. That was around November. I think we finished on Thanksgiving Day, or at least I remember cleaning weapons Thanksgiving Day. We're in that, and anybody who's been through the Q course can probably relate to this. We must have spent 16 hours Thanksgiving Day cleaning weapons to turn into the weapons pool. So, it's just forever. It's forever, man. And it's raining. It was cold. It sucked. And, you're done phase 1, so that part's good. But now you're sitting at Bragg, and all you want to do is go out and eat and grab a beer and get cleaned up. And plus, we're on MREs the whole time, so everyone's like probably constipated and stuff, the way the old MREs were. So anyway, then came January, and I went down to 300 F1 in Texas, and I spent about probably 7 months, 8 months down there because I failed out, and then I got recycled. Okay. So I started back from the beginning again. So I was in 2 different classes for the 18 Delta course, and then I went about halfway through again and failed out again. And it was, I legitimately failed out. My GPA was still pretty good. I was in a 91 percentile on all my grades and stuff like that. But I screwed up on Trauma Clinic 2, I think they called it, and I missed an IV. It was one of the simplest things. I missed an IV and a cubicle one, too. It was like the super easiest one to hit, and I blew it. So I failed out, and I got held around for a month, and I got sent back to Maryland. And then I worked for a while, and then I got my shit together and went back to the Q course in 1990.
Now, did you pick that route you were going to go this time around?
Yeah. I wasn't going to go back to 18 Delta course. So, yeah, they sent me to 18 Bravo course, which I want. Bravo or Charlie would have been fine with me. I didn't want to do Echo because I don't want to be a combo guy, but
how did that feel? Like all of a sudden, like I wanted this since I was 6. And then it was just like for like you said, a menial, like, oh my gosh, like this one little thing.
The Q course is like this for me, at least. And it was just a long slog. It's like, it goes on forever, man.
Yeah.
And you go through the beginning part and it sucks. You do the phase 1 stuff and you get to be, and I got the pleasure of going through the old phase 1 where I went through Charlie Company, known as the Body Nazis. You had 3 companies, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. And so I went through with Charlie Company and it was terrible. Our patrolling phase was set up like a mini ranger school, and at the time I was told that we had RIs from 4th RTB down at Benning to come up and actually run the patrol phase in the Q course. Yeah, now I don't know how true that is. Like I said, I was 19. No one's beating down my door to tell me the right information. Right. So I don't know. So I went out to phase 1, 170 pounds. I came back 134 pounds.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I was a ton of weight.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
and it was like, yeah, well, they did it rained the whole time. It was cold as hell. They were doing the 1 meal. Patrolling favors is only, I think it's like 8 days, 9 days or something like that. You also had a survival period in there. Yeah. And then you had your land nav was before. So it goes land nav and then I think survival and then patrol. Joins the last phase when I went. So anyway, yeah, so not only did I get to go through that phase 1, I got back to the Q course in time to go to SFAS when they first started it off. Prior to SFAS, they had soft T. So that was where they were still experimenting with how they're going to do it because it was based on the Australian SAS model of the Golden Road, their selection process. So our land nav was all roads. It was just long distance walking. And I went through the last summer class in August of 1990. So I went through the first easy class because we had the Chow Hall. Chow Hall opened up. The class before mine in July, they lost a ton of guys. They were getting sack lunches. They were getting bologna, cheese, and mayonnaise sandwiches in summertime. So they're getting sick. They were dropping out left and right. They lost a little. So July 1990 was the last super hard class, and mine was the first easy class. So I can say that. But it was terrible. I broke my foot, my wrist. Day 1 of team week. We had day 2 of team week, excuse me. Then it was that big telephone pole. Have you already heard all these things, the different events they have?
No, so it's no. I know more about the SEALs. Yeah. They go into it because also from several of the people that we had on the show from all the different ages, it seems to be like it's they have a book. Yeah. And they go buy that book and it seems chaotic, but it's actually like super organized, right? Yeah. But then when I talk to some Green Berets, it doesn't sound like it's as organized at all.
It's not. You go through some years, they're super hard. Okay, so the mid-90s, you get about probably 90, no offense to anybody who went through it during the time period, but from probably 95 to 98, maybe 99, the Q course was just, look, man, if you had a pulse and you had a 110 GT, actually 100 GT, they lowered the GT score to 100, and they didn't even make it necessary. You didn't have to pass the swim test, which is like, they were doing a push for minorities. And they were coming up with the concept that, these guys, minorities can't swim. It's like, well, that's not true.
Yeah,
if you want
this concept.
And if you want to be a Green Beret, learn how to swim. It's not that hard. The swim test is a joke. You can literally float down and back. There's no time. It's not hard. And you're just in a uniform. It's not like you have equipment on or anything like that. They lowered the standards, in my opinion, greatly during that time period. And so you had a lot of guys get through. So during that time period, it really wasn't that hard. And then you get guys that get to the Q course. As a matter of fact, there's another guy, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, he was known as the sheriff of Baghdad. I can't remember his name. He was a Delta Force guy. And I listened to he did an interview somewhere. It was really interesting what he said. Because it pissed me off initially. He was like, oh yeah, Q course was a joke. Anybody can make it. I'm like, bullshit. And I was like, oh, he went through it like 96, 90. He's right. He was absolutely right. Because I was on a team at the time. So I remember when they dropped all their standards, he started getting guys on teams that I wouldn't let become a supply sergeant in my unit, Wow. And now here they are 18, So
it's more just organized, you find, than from the SEALs where they're, like I said, it seems chaotic, but they're like, we had, I think it was Marty Strong on the show, Navy SEAL, and I believe it was him that was telling me this story, and he said when he was an instructor, he then went to be an instructor, and he said, one point they one of the guys pushed the guys too hard and they ended up passed out on the beach and they couldn't wake them up. And it was because, and then I guess one of the older instructors, I'm totally butchering this story, by the way, but came out and was like, what's going on? And he goes, you pushed them too hard. You were supposed to do this.
That's right.
Because you know they're going to go to tired and then you back off. You push them to tired, right? He goes, you pushed them to complete exhaustion.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's why we have this formula. Because it's like they make a seal, they break you down and make you, but they follow this formula because they want to make sure you're not going to quit, right? So for you guys, it's more like we're going to test some stuff out.
And I don't know what the deal is. I don't know how, and I don't mean to be negative about SF. I'm not. I mean, the best years of my life were probably on some of my teams. And the Q course when I went through, the first time in particular, when I went through phase one was a goddamn nightmare.
First time is through D.
Yeah, that's right, through the 18 Delta course.
Because what I'm curious about is, was it different for you going 18 Delta first time and then 18 Bravo? Like, is it the same type of stuff?
They changed the formula a little bit because they introduced SFAS. So when I went to SFAS, you still had a couple of Australian guys out there as advisors to the SF cadre out there. So they were explaining some of the stuff. Now, they took a little more care in my class when it came, because it was August. It's super hot down there. Bragg's a nightmare in summertime, Now,
when you went through all times, were you always in summer?
No, because the first time I went to the Q course at all, 19, that was wintertime. Well, not wintertime, but it was fall. Might as well be winter because it rained the whole time. And it never got above like 40 degrees. And you would have an instructor, and I'll give you an example. So phase one, the first time when I went, you had foreign officers in our class with us. We had 2 Africans, and they're cousins. And so we're doing our poncho raft thing. You got to build a poncho raft, and they put you in, I think it's Naked Creek, but it's right there next to McCall. And this is November. That water's, it's not freezing, but it's cold as shit. And it actually, the way the Army sets standards, it was below the level that you were safely allowed to enter the water.
Yeah.
It's just training, so they still have requirements. If it's this temperature, you can't do it. They didn't give a shit. They did it anyway. So they still put us in there. And so we get out, and there's one African officer that did it, a little tiny fella. He didn't have boots on when he did it the first time. And when he got out, the instructor saw him and said, you're going to do it again. And this guy was wailing and crying and everything. They made him do it again. He gets in there, he's coming down, and he's yelling, help, I can me and stuff like that, right? I don't mean to do his accent, but that's what he sounded like to me. And well, one of the instructors, I won't say his names, I remember this dude, he was a pretty big badass dude. He jumps in, and he's swimming next to the guy, and he's yelling, don't touch me, just hold on to your ruck, that kind of stuff. And the guy grabbed onto him, and this dude's hand has the size of a ham, comes out to beat him unconscious in the water. And then he got out to the end and dragged him up and just basically dropped him right there on the
my
side.
gosh.
So now another instructor would have gotten in and probably stayed farther away. There's a lot of variations in the cube.
Right. Yeah.
It just depends on when you go through, who is running it, because Bravo Company, when they were in theirs through, was very easy. Their guys showed up out there at McCall. They got their stuff, had time to put their beds together, get all that stuff together and everything, and then they showed up for formation. Like, and I talked to friends of mine, and they were telling me about it. And mine, when I got there, and that's what I was expected. I was like, cool, okay, we can get there, get the stuff together. No. There's 2 bridges that lead onto McCall, right? At least there used to be. I have no idea what it looks like now. So once you get out of that second bridge, is actually McCall proper. They stopped the trucks, they beat on the side, everybody got thrown out of the trucks, and you had to carry all your shit. We had 6 cases of MREs you had to carry. So you had all your MREs till they gave you all your food ahead of time.
Yeah.
I don't know if every class did that. I don't know if any other class did that. I think it's pretty damn stupid. So you have all your stuff and trying to get it all wrapped up to your rucksack because everything's in your ruck. And now they're running you all over McCall. If you've never been there before, you have no idea how far McCall proper the actual compound is. And so we had guys quitting left and right. I've never seen so many grown men quit in my life. These guys are dropping like flies left and right. And we finally get to McCall, and then they walk us right through McCall. And then you had more people quit, and then he turns around, brings us back in.
No.
Oh, yeah, there's not get more people quit.
How many did you start with? And during that, and then how many did you end with?
So for phase one, for the first time I went to the Q course in the 80s, for phase one, if I remember properly, we started off, I think it was about 300 guys at the PT test.
Okay.
The PT test, we probably lost, between that and the swim test, you did consecutively. At the end of the swim test, I think we probably lost about 100 guys. So we were a little over 200 people, if I remember right, going out there. When we finished phase one and came out of phase one back, from McCall back to Bragg, we had, if I remember right, probably about 87 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if I told the story enough to where I just remember it that way or if that's how it really was, but I think that's the number I kind of recall.
So when you graduate, well, first of all, how was it for you? What was that period like for you? Like in the, I failed out to, I'm going to do this again. Like, because you said you had these like jobs that you hated,
man, I
all
was
this
crushed.
stuff. Like, what was going on? And
I didn't care about being a medic. So when I failed out of the Delta course, I was like, whatever, they're going to make me an 18 Bravo now, right? No.
Yeah.
I was over a year. Your phase 1 was only good for a year. So it had been over a year since I had failed out. So by the time they would have got me back in the course. So I was actually like 10 and a half months to the next class they wouldn't be able to get me into, which put me at a year. So I had to start all the way from scratch. That's what broke my heart. So that was a couple of years. I didn't get back to the Q course until I failed out. I was 20. And I got back to it, I think, at 23.
no, did you know that you were definitely going to get back?
Well, there was a time there where I didn't. There was a time there I was like, fuck this, I'm going to go to Jamaica and grow dope. I don't know, something else. I was totally distraught. I never failed it before, so failing was a crushing experience. And I tell you, I my son's been raised with this stuff. I was like, you will learn 10 times more about yourself failing than you ever will succeeding. So if you succeed at everything, you're not pushing yourself, man. There should be some failure. There should be some losses in that column. So that was, and then I hit a point where I was like, I find myself, I'm working as an electrical apprentice. I'm going to school. I'm delivering pizzas. I'm partying all the time. I mean, I knew where all the party was. I was a pizza deliverer, So so my routine was I get off work at like 10, 11 o'clock at night delivering pizzas. We'd go into Baltimore, go hit Hammer Jacks, which is a big club at the time.
Okay.
You get liquored up there, then drive back down to Annapolis and go to Denny's and eat breakfast. Then you go in and we goes to Subway, goes home, and then it's wash, rinse, repeat. You have to doing that for 6 months, 7 months. You're like, this is not how life is supposed to be, man. And that's when I got my shit together again and put all the, because in the Guard, you got to really do your paperwork. No one's going to help you.
Yeah.
Guarantee you nobody in the Guard is going to help you one bit. And my company didn't. And if any of you guys are listening, you can go to hell. Because I had to do all that shit myself. And I was a rock when it came to administrative stuff. So I got back into Q course. It was a one-time shot for me. So when I went to phase 1, SFAS, in 1990, I was like, it's a one-way trip for me. My foot got broken. My wrist got broken. Everything was busted up on me. I was in terrible shape. And I still, on that last day, it's a 26-miler or a 22-miler. I can't remember which. And the way that we did it then, it's like you went from McCall to St. Mary Police. I think you said ended near the drop zone, right? Came out about, I went and drove it later on. That was 26 miles. I'm pretty sure their time was like 22 or 24 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
26, man. So, and it was terrible. It took me 8.5 hours to do it. I was taking Motrin. I read on a Motrin, and they gave me this.
You had a broken foot?
Yeah, I had a broken foot. So, okay.
Oh, my God.
That's another quick story.
Yeah.
So, this guy, we're doing a telephone pole carry, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's 6 of us. And there's this dude from West Virginia, a little fella in West Virginia, who was in front of me. And the way we were doing it, you had a 12-man team. You had 2 apparatus you had to move, 2 telephone poles. So you had 2 teams moving stuff. And the way you did it is they had 4 guys that were actually carrying. They had 2 guys in reserve. And you would take like 10, it got to a point, I think we were taking 10 steps, and then you're switching out. So if you're in the back on the log, you'd move up to the front, and the guys in the front would come to the back, and the guys in the back would come up and take that. Well, this guy couldn't handle the weight. And so he dropped, as we were switching, he dropped the weight on my wrist.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and it broke my wrist like that. It was like cartoonish.
Oh, my God.
You watch it, they just swell up. Oh. Yeah, and the guys are like, oh, my God, I don't know, because they'll throw you out for injuries, right? So,
you don't get a roll. It's a throw out.
No, you're medically removed, and then you can come back to the next class. I'm like, there's no goddamn way. I already got this far through it. 'Cause I already went to gate 1. I already went to the misery that was the first week of it, or first and second week of it, now in the third. And so anyway, so I'm like I'm hiding it from the instructor. I'll never forget the instructor's name, Sergeant First Class Fisher. And I hated that guy with all of my heart. And I tell you what, years later, I was like, that dude was awesome. He prevented more turds from coming to SF than anybody else I knew. So if you're still alive out there, good on you. So anyway, so now I still have to keep stepping in for this guy. And when I stepped in for him, like 200 meters down the road, my foot just snapped. I mean, it just broke.
Wow.
It fell on or anything, just stepping off and it broke. So because prior to that, I was good, man. Physically, I was doing great. My run times were good, work times were good. There was no problem on land nav. Everything was going awesome. And then that happened. So in 200 meters period of time, everything went to shit. And so now it's just suckering myself getting through it. So Fisher had saw my wrist was jacked up. So he called me over. I showed up. I didn't have my gun. I had to go back and get my gun. I got in trouble for that. So I grab my gun, I go back over, and he has me carry these 2 water cans around the vehicle to see if I could carry them or not. And I could, because I just, first of all, it numbed out.
Yeah.
Secondly, it was like, I'm not using my thumb to carry anyone, I'm just using my hands. So my fingers. So he's like, nah, bullshit, get on the truck, you're out of here. So I went to TMC 14 out of Camp McCall. Doc Payton was the guy who was there, been there for like 3,000 years. This guy was an 18 Delta in Vietnam for I don't know how many years. So now he's I think he was retired. I don't know, he had a big rockin' mustache though. And so he looks at it, he's like, yeah, that's broken. I'm crying, man. I'm crying like a little girl. I was so upset because this is it for me. I'm like, I'm going back home, I'm going to college, or I'm going to go work somewhere. I'm done with this bullshit. Well, they sent me back to Womack, and I got there at lunchtime. So the doc's not there, and it's just a Spec 4 that's doing x-ray stuff, right? Well, I was far enough in the medic course where I understood how x-rays worked, and it's an irregular bone. So if you don't get it right over top of it, you're not going to see a fracture in it at all. So I lied to the kid. He couldn't read Peyton's writing, so he didn't know which side to do, and I put it to the other side. I was like, yeah, you're going to do it over here, right? So they obviously x-rayed wrong, told me to come back in an hour. I went down. I stole a whole bunch of potatoes from the chow hall. They had a chow hall there in the old Womack. And I went back upstairs, and my x-ray was there, said I could return to duty, but it had a yellow sticky on there asking me to go see the doctor. I was like, fuck that. I took that sticky off, threw it in the trash. I went back out, got in the van, and went back to McCall. So I'm one of the few people, I'm almost sure no one's got to pull that bullshit off before.
Oh my
So, yeah,
God,
someone had to
what
fall.
a story.
Yeah, they so when I got out there, my team got wiped out. So the first team I was on was like 12 or 14 guys, I can't remember what. And they were all big guys. There was me and this lieutenant from Range Battalion, from 1st Ranger Bat. Good fellow, can't remember his name. And roster number 87. There. That guy. So I get back out there and my team's wiped out. So I missed ammo cans. I'd have to do ammo cans, ammo crates, right? Which is like a really tough one. So I kind of got over, man. I got over on SFAS. I don't have any regrets. So anyway, so I got put onto a new team. Me and this lieutenant got put on a new team. All my guys got wiped out. They're all these real big dudes, real big studly guys. They just didn't have the endurance for it. So they just got wiped out by day 2 with all the constant, walking around carrying heavy shit, which is kind of funny because I was a little guy. I was maybe 160 pounds. So
And a broken wrist.
yeah, and a broken foot. They didn't see the foot. Had they seen the foot, I would have got thrown out. There's no way. So for the rest of selection, I'm greasing up my foot. I put it in a boot. Thank God for the chow hall because you can get ice out of there. So I was able to smuggle ice out and ice up my foot. And I couldn't go to the medics yet because they tossed me for that. So and I was getting screwed with too by this jackass named Fish. That was one of the few guys' names I remember. And I'm going to 7th Group eventually too. He was a turd. I don't care if you're there or not. I'll always hate that guy. I never saw him since selection, but I'll never forget that dude for that shit. Because he was like, oh, you're not going to make it number 113. I think it was roster number 113. And so anyway, which actually probably helped. I ought to thank him maybe because it probably helped me pass when I went through it.
Yeah.
Because I hated that guy so much. But I didn't tell him until the 26 miler. I went to the medic, and I'd been working on people's feet for Motrin. So I was able to get Motrin in me to reduce the swelling. So that helped out a lot. And then, but I was running out of it for the 24 miler or 26 miler, whatever the hell it was, to go back to finish the selection on. So so I went to the medic, the real medic, and he gave me this stuff, I think myosin. I can't remember. It's another anti-inflammatory. He didn't know I had Motrin. You can't mix the two. So I didn't know you couldn't mix the two. And I get about 5 miles into the road march, and my foot's starting to hurt a lot. And so I take this other stuff, and about 30 minutes later, it's like the belly band started getting tight. I had my belly band on. And I looked at my shirt, and I was looking like I'm in my 2nd trimester. My gut's sticking out, and I start throwing up. So I finished the rest of that thing throwing up, dragging my foot along.
Oh my God.
So you had a rubber duck, right? And at the time, it's like, this is going forever, man. It's like this road, every time you come around a corner, you're expecting someone to be there. There's nobody there.
Oh.
So I'm like taking my gun out, throwing it on the ground, kicking it, picking it up, walking it. I'm so fucking mad, man. And they get to the end and they take me back, and about 4 of us, 5 of us actually were taken back to the hospital to be x-rayed. Lots of guys break their stuff in selection. It's not a big deal. And but one dude who we were carrying through the hospital trying to get worked on, out of the 5 of us, he was the only one that didn't have anything broken. He was going for this. Yeah, he ended up getting peered out, but he ended up he was trying to go for that sympathy vote, But he got peered out anyway. So yeah, so I ended up getting a cast on my foot. I never got my wrist fixed, and then and the rest is history. I mean, I finished the Q course and just went on forever and ever, and it was fine. But I was glad I graduated.
How painful was that experience, and how did you like just keep going? How did you get out of your head of, I'm sure.
Well, I will tell anybody this. Okay. So if you don't know anything about Roy Benavidez, I would look him up.
Okay.
He's one of that is probably the baddest man in history. That dude has suffered so much shit in a couple of firefights and a whole bunch of firefights, actually. And he had been my guest speaker when I was in the 18 Delta course when I was a kid, when I was 19. And I remember watching that dude and thinking, that dude's a bad motherfucker. I mean, that's who I want. So that's kind of that, and a guy like Bob Howard, Colonel Howard, he was another Medal of Honor winner and stuff. So a lot of our history in SF, you look at some of the guys that won stuff, they're like, these dudes didn't quit at anything. Yeah. Bullet wounds, fragmentation wounds, bayonets in the guts, they didn't stop. Nothing stopped them. So I'm like, I got a broken foot and a broken wrist, big fucking deal. No one's shooting at me, So it worked out.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my God. Now, going off of everything you got going on, when you finally made it, now how long, because I know the 18 Delta is 3 years, so how long was it for you to actually get your Green Beret?
Well, from SFAS all the way to the end, it was about 9 months, 10 months, and that was because I was delayed starting the 18 Delta course because of my broken foot.
Okay.
So once the cast came off, which I had to cut it off myself, it was like military medicine sucks. I mean, not all the time. There's places that are good. There's times when it's good and stuff. But for me, it just never seemed to work out. I couldn't even find a doctor around that would cut the damn thing off. So finally, and the next class was coming up. It wasn't fully healed. And I'm like, screw it. And I hacksawed it off myself and then went to the Q course. And I suffered for it because my foot had a bit of atrophy. It was like, it was weak. My calf, I had no calf left. It was just pathetic looking. So I was getting my ass kicked on the runs. I was getting my ass kicked on the ruck marches and all that shit. And then it came back and it was fine.
How long did it take you to fully, for it to come back? And
maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay.
By the time 18 Delta or 18 Bravo course or 18 Bravo portion phase 2, by the time that was over, I was fine. I was 100%. So when I went out to McCall, and at the time they did this new thing for the Q course, they combined phase 1 and 3. So they called it phase 13 because they lack imagination that way. So you go to phase 13 where now you're doing all the patrolling and survival stuff and everything, and then you're rolling into the Robin Sage stuff, and there's no really demarcation between one and the other. So it just generally phase 3 is like they're actually training you and teaching you. You're still being tested, obviously, and people still fail out and everything like that, but they're not really screwing with you now. Now they're really trying to teach you UW operations, unconventional warfare operations. Well, when they did the phase 13 thing, there was no end of anything. There was just a constant kind of screw with you the whole time because they didn't know, and we don't know what the hell we're doing this because there's nothing written down on exactly how you're going to run this shit,
Wow.
And if there was probably all jacked up because some dude back at Bragg wrote it who wasn't going to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I keep thinking of when we had Marty on the show, and he was like, when I went in for an instructor, the first time he was there, he was like, just them, they were doing an evolution or something. And I walk into the briefing and he's like, it looked like, we were going to go kill Bin Laden. He was like, it was like everything was like laid out and this and that and all this stuff. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it's so detailed.
Yeah.
And it's because they want the same results every single time.
I don't think they screw with it in the Navy. I think the Navy had, this is how we're doing it. This is how we did it in 64. This is how we're doing it in 84. This is how we're doing it in 2014.
Their equipment, they say, has improved. Because, I remember when I went down to Bud's and I was with Diego, who was also on the show. He was taking me around the compound. And he was like, when I was in Bud's class, we actually had to, I forgot what he was showing me some boats. And he goes, carry or something. He goes, now they get they put it on these wheels and they walk by.
Yeah.
But, and then when another guy, we had Hector on the show, and I met him down in the museum, and he was telling me they also got smarter medically. He goes, because, he had a foot, and I think his toe or something with his foot. And he goes, and it was just Motrin. And he goes, and they cut my boot and, so that let it breathe. But it's that, he goes, now it's they have different stuff. But, I know
it's foot powder or Motrin. You having a heart attack? Here's from foot powder or Motrin. It doesn't matter. You lost an eye? Foot powder or Motrin, man. It's it fixes everything. It's a wonder drug,
It's so interesting, though, listening to especially your stories, too, because you went through it through 80s and then
And the 90s.
90s. Yeah. The
Privilege of seeing it twice.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
This is what happens when you're stupid. You know, so you get to do things more than once.
yeah. And so how was it for you when you finally got your Green Beret? Because it was like, this is all you wanted. So for me listening to you, I'm making the assumption that like you were going to be in it until the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I finished, so when I graduated, got my Green Beret, I went back to 20th group, back up to Maryland, and immediately put in my paperwork to go active. So then I went, I had to wait like 4 months or something like that. I went to college in the meantime, and I went back. I went active duty. I went through the whole process like you'd never been in. You got to go through maps and all that bullshit.
Okay.
So I did all that, showed up at Bragg. I was a corporal because they wouldn't promote me. My unit wouldn't promote me because I was leaving the unit. And they shredded my jump record.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Wow.
And now I'm not going to blame the whole unit. Plus, Charlie 120 is up in Massachusetts now, so it has nothing to do with the unit I was in. Anybody who was in the unit I was in, remember, I was 19. I'm now 57. All these guys are in their 60s or dead. You know, so I don't really give a shit if they have a problem with it or not. But yeah, so I put in my paperwork, ended up down at Bragg. I got assigned to SWIC, Special Warfare Center.
Yeah.
So now it's funny. I just left here 4 months ago, and now I'm working in SWIC. And I was lucky enough to go to 2nd Battalion, and I got a job over at SOTIC, Special Operations Target Interdiction School, Sniper School. So I was like, great. So I was a pit warrior at Sniper School as a corporal. Nobody knows what to do with you either. When you're a corporal and you have a SF tab, they're like, what did you do wrong? It happened. You get busted? What do you get busted for? That kind of shit. It's typical, the SF circle, sewing circle, gossipy stuff. And when I got E5, I got less than half the respect I had when I was a corporal, Everybody thought it was probably a cool story, yes. But anyway, so I ended up there for a year at SOTIC working, and then I got orders for 1st to the 7th and went to ODA 721, and I was there for several years, and then ended up on. I re-enlisted. At the time when you re-enlisted, they gave you 4 months to go to college. So I went to Fayetteville Technical Community College for 4 months, right? So when I come out of school, my team deployed.
What do you go for?
Huh?
What do you go for 4 months?
Oh,
Like what?
well, I took max classes, so I took whatever amount of credits that was, and I was going towards industrial management.
Okay.
I didn't know that. I didn't really care about college degree. I never did.
Yeah.
When I finally did graduate college, it was just to get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I finished that. I go back to my unit, and my team's deployed to Venezuela, and so they're like, oh well, the guy we're going to bring down to the B team, we're not going to bring now because he shot a blank adapter off a 249, right? So he's an idiot. We're going to bring you down instead. I'm like, that's bullshit. Because I think I just made E6. I was like, everything's going good. I'm more competent as an 18 Bravo. I had a really good senior, a guy named Bob Forgan. He ended up getting killed. He was a Delta guy. He used to make knives. You would look him up. He was like a real big knife maker. So he's got a real good reputation. He was an awesome guy. And so my shit was together, man. I was into the zone. I was SOT. I was on a SOT team, Special Operations door kicking school. So I got to go to that school, and our team was kind of gelling a little bit. We had a pretty good team at the time, even though we had massive team starting turnovers and stuff. And then I ended up down on the B team, which sucked. I mean, hey, the B team is one of the worst places you can go. And I didn't do anything wrong. You usually end up there because you're broken or you have family problems or something like that. I didn't have any of that shit. Wow. I just wrong place, wrong time, and I ended up going down there for a year.
That's the jungle, essentially, right? Was that your jungle?
No.
No, that's different.
When I left the B team, I went back to a team 722.
Now, did you know, by the way, like it was going to be a year, or it was like you had no idea how long you were going to be there?
Generally, the way it worked at the time, and it may still work, almost everybody's going to do time on a B team at some point, or a C team up at battalion, or you can end up at group. Generally, that's 1 or 2 years. So on a B team, it's usually a year. Because nobody should have to do that for more than a year. I mean, nobody joined SF to go to the B team and request drop zones, ranges, and all this other silly shit that you got to do as an admin. I didn't join to be an admin guy. I joined to be a guy named Green Beret. I want to be a barrel chest of freedom fighter, man. I hadn't built the barrel chest yet. So I was like, I still want to stay on a team. So anyway, I did my year on a B team. I went to OD 722, good team, good guys, and was there for a while. And then I was kind of disgruntled with the whole thing at that point. I hated my sergeant major. He was a dick, and so was the commander. I hated him as well. And there was all this kind of weird infighting between the commander and the sergeant major. And you start seeing this stuff, and it's like, well, what's my ultimate goal? Am I ultimately going to be a sergeant major someday? And then after getting pulled off a team involuntarily, I'm like, they could put me off the team anytime they want. They could put me back in SWIC. I could go anywhere. And I'm like, I don't want to do that shit. So now I started looking at getting out and just going to anywhere, agency, FBI, something along those lines, do something different. And so that started me on I had an opportunity to get on the Jungle Operations Training Battalion as an instructor. I figured I'd do that, finish my year up that I had left in the Army, finish it down there, come back and go do something else. But I had such a good time down at the JOTB, it kind of revitalized me. I was like, this is awesome. And then you see the rest of the Army. And, me as an E5, E6, E7 in the Army, and if you're an SF baby, you don't know how SF baby means. You start off in SF, you've only been in SF. I thought that there was something missing in my background, that I wasn't good enough for this stuff and all that crap, that, maybe I missed something in my education and I'm not as good as I should be. And then I went down to Jungle Operations Training Battalion and watched units come through. And I was like, no, man, most of these guys, a lot of soldiers are fine. It's the units that kind of suck. They'll have shitty leadership. They make bad decisions. They'll treat privates like they don't have a brain in their head. We don't do that. Our guys, like, if you're an E5, you show up on a team, it's like, okay, this guy's at least at this level. So this is what you're in charge of. Got any questions? No. Okay, move out. You can go do your stuff. You can't do that in Big Army. I think in Big Army, they kind of dumb people down a lot. And that's the problem. And that's why I think a lot of people get out. It's like you can get a guy who's a smart dude, he's a go-getter and everything like that. And this is going to jump the fence and go to SF or Delta or something along those lines, or become a pilot or an officer or something like that. His future is like, well, here I am in 10th Mountain, and now I'm a team leader, and now, eventually I'm going to become a staff sergeant. I'm out of the ruck marching game and shooting game. Now I've moved up to a point where I'm an admin guy, essentially.
So when you were like, during that disgruntled time period, right? And you were like annoyed on where you were and didn't like the commander and everyone. How were you performing, and what was going on in your mind? Like, were you like, I'm still going to do my job to the best of my ability? Was it like, I really don't care? Did you have another goal in mind that you were working towards to get out of your situation?
Well, no, I was looking at something else in the civilian sector, maybe going to something that I thought I might enjoy. I had no idea. Once again, I was still I wasn't a dumbass, and now I'm at 30, at that time. But I was like, I'm getting older. We're not really doing the stuff that I want to do. I thought we'd be doing combat stuff.
Yeah.
There's wars all over South and Central America. We're going on all the time. Why are we not in? Why are we not involved in? We're training guys. We go to Columbia and we're training them to go out and fight. But we can't go with them because heaven forbid one of us gets hurt. You joined for that reason. So I felt kind of like I was lied to. Instead, I'm going and, we're going down and we're teaching 7-8 infantry stuff. Okay, great. I just taught these guys these guys are actually the Colombians, the Hondurans, the people I work. They're actually combat veterans. I'm teaching them our stuff. They've already done combat. I haven't done combat. Who the hell am I to teach them anything? So I kind of see it as like, this is just a bunch of bullshit. I'm not really doing any of the stuff I wanted to do.
Right.
And I should have gone, I wish I had, because Bob Horgan at the time had gone over to Delta. He came back to the company. He was talking, he was like, yeah, man, you should go to selection. I'm like, to me, at the time, I didn't want to go to Delta because I was like, well, I thought all they did was these door kick and, blow shit up and stuff like that. And that sounds like fun, but it didn't sound like, to me, SF seemed like a longer term. Bear in mind, this is how I looked at it when I was 30. All right. So to me, I was like, they're doing like one slide deep operations. All right, you're going to kill this guy. Great. You killed that guy. You went in to save these hostages. That's great. Good job. But SF, you're building armies, man. You're taking over countries. To me, that was what I wanted. I wanted an army. I wanted to be part of something that was really a big movement and stopping stuff. Look at the guys in El Salvador and what they accomplished with things in Nicaragua and everything like that. It was a huge success. That's what I wanted to be a part of. Look at the guys in Vietnam, in SF. They were training mountaineers. They had their own armies. As an E5, my first time down South America was in Honduras. I had my own company. We had a 160-man infantry company. We had a battalion we were training, but me and another friend of mine, we had our own company. So we did all the training with them and all that kind of stuff. You're fully responsible for all this stuff. I liked that. I didn't like being dictated to. And then it seemed like he was getting more and more dictated to. They're telling us, oh, you can't drink when you get out of South America. It's not like I'm a big drinker. I'm like, I'm a 30-year-old man. You tell me I can't have a beer? What the hell? How did you tell an SF guy? Now you're saying, yeah, well, we're still going to do all that shit. And now if you get caught, you need to throw that. So it's just stuff like that was changing. I thought we were getting a lot of senior leaders that I don't think should have been senior leaders for SF. They'd have been great somewhere else.
Right.
Don't care where, but not with us. So now, and that was how I looked at it at that time. And I realized now, especially after my civilian jobs with a lot of Delta guys, that obviously was not just what they did. So I kind of disappointed that I didn't explore that further.
So when you went down to be a jungle instructor, loved it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was awesome. The whole team was 18 Bravos. I was NCOIC of waterborne training, so I was given responsibilities. And he was, so I got to run all our training, and all the guys got along. There was no problem down there. And you get to see the rest of the Army, and then you realize we actually are, I'm not going to say better. I'm saying we're given more freedoms. We're given more responsibilities. So me as an E6, I was an E6 in Colombia. I had signed for $50 million worth of ammunition. No, you can't do that. Nobody else in the Army does that. We'll do it. And it's like at the time I'm saying, is it okay if I sign for that? I don't know if I was supposed to do this or not. And they're like, just sign it, man. Don't be a pussy. So you do all this stuff, and it's like you don't know what you can't do. You're not really given any limitations. So when the limitations started to show their ugly head is when I started being like, man, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore.
So then let's talk about that. Let's talk about your transition out, because you wanted to go FBI, CIA, like that, that route, right? And then you had the stop loss, right? Yeah. So why don't we talk about your transition out? And you mentioned it was challenging. So talk to me about.
So when I came back from Panama, I went to Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion. I was on a terrible team. The guys on my team, there were 2 guys on the team that were really good dudes. The rest of the team were just shit. They didn't do PT. We never did PT together as a team. We had 4 guys who were basically in charge of the team. And they were just 4 fat-ass, useless dudes, in my opinion. When I first got to the team, you look at them like, oh my God, you gotta be shitting me. And I asked to go to the scuba team when I got back, and they're like, no, we don't have any slots. I'm like, you always have slots for scuba. Nobody wants to go to scuba school. It sucks, right? So there's always open slots on scuba teams. There are no full, it might be now, but there were never full teams. So they didn't. They didn't put me on this mountain team, and probably just gave up who that team was, right? But I don't really care about that either. But yeah, there was a terrible team. They couldn't shoot. They wouldn't train together. We're supposed to be a mountain team. The only guys on the team that could climb with the dam were the guys who didn't want to be on a mountain team in the first place, you know? And so that gave me a bad taste in my mouth, because everything was going great in Panama. Awesome, you know? Get home, and now it sucks. And so, okay, so what do I do now? And then I ended up I got to go to Safartech, and I chose at that point to get out, Special Forces Advanced Reconnaissance Target Acquisition Course. And that's for going to the CIF, the Commanders in Extremist Force, now known as the CRIF, the Commanders Reaction Force, if I remember right. And so you go to, it's like an 8 or 10 week course of just door kicking, blowing up doors, basically doing, Delta Junior shit, and then you go to Charlie 37, Charlie Company, which is now, that's all they do is they train, and they train, and they train. They don't do all the bullshit we were doing. Because remember, I didn't talk about red cycle taskings. You go through red cycle on a team, and now I'm the rough terrain jumper in August in front of the USASOC building, having to tell some Argentinian general, Buenos dias, yo soy Sargento Keating, el sargento de armas, equipo 771. And it's like, I've never jumped this crap before. I don't know anything about it, So you're doing the mod demo stuff. Do you ever see the movie The Green Berets?
No.
Okay, so watch it sometime. At the very beginning of that, they have what's called a Gabriel detachment.
Okay.
And they get out there, and they're just showcasing what SF does. And they get up there and say, I speak German and Russian, and then the 18 Charlie on the team, and blah, 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 blah. And then you do all these demonstrations and all this other crap, and it kind of sells it to, like, politicians and foreign nations and stuff like that. It's just it's an advertisement. Well, it sucks. And I don't want to do that and do it. And if you're not doing that, then it's like, oh, you're going to have to drive a truck for the other company that's doing training in the 2nd Battalion, or you're going to be head count at the chow hall. And it's like, who the hell goes through all this bullshit to get to a team to now do this other support crap? I didn't join to become a support guy. There's people that do support work. Let them do it. They join for that. They want to do what I do. They can go through the same bullshit I went through to come to do what I do. So no, that was another thing that really upset me. I thought at SF at the time, we were becoming teachers in baggy pants, as a guy, Chris Etz would say. He used to be my team sergeant, later was a sergeant major, and a really smart guy. And he was, we're like baggers or teachers of baggy pants. We're not really going out and doing the stuff, It just seemed like bullshit at the time. Then it changed. So it changed around when SAFAR came around, Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat. And that's where we had Colonel Cambria, and he stood up a team. They were in 7th Group. He put a lot of money into it, and we started basically running SAFAR Tech for our own guys. So our own people were able to go through the training, and now they're back engaged again. They're actually doing warrior skills again.
Yeah.
There was a lull there. Well, we didn't, man. You went to schools, you came back, and then you did bullshit. You go to school, come back, bullshit. So they started getting serious about it. It was pre-9/11. And so I switched over. Once I went to Safari Tech, and I wasn't going to go to Charlie 37, I went over to the Safari Committee and was an instructor over there and become an NCOIC of marksmanship.
Now, during this time, was it in your mind about getting out?
Oh, yeah, I already signed
So
a statement.
I
I was done, man.
You were
got
done.
put off the promotion list. I was
When
out.
did you have left from that?
To retire?
Yeah.
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. I got out of 15 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, so at the time, it was like, I don't care if, I was a lot braver then than I am now. So, and so me, I'm like, I'm not afraid. I'm not going to be your slave just because I got 5 more years left in it. Screw you. I'll go do something else. The age cutoff for federal law enforcement at the time was 37, and I was 34. So I went and finished college, applied to the Secret Service, got hired. I applied to all of them, actually, but Secret Service bit. So I went through their whole process, which takes like 2 years. At the time, it took forever. And did all their interviews and all that crap, polygraph, which I passed. And got hired as a Secret Service agent. So great.
Wow.
I have a job, then stop loss happened. So I got stop loss, and our sergeant major.
Explain to our listeners what stop loss
So
exactly.
when the towers came down, they stop lost all special operations that I'm aware of, and that's probably across the military. I'm sure Force Recon, everybody got stop lost, and probably wider than that. I'm sure a lot of infantry units, a lot of support personnel got stop lost, and so when I got stop lost, I think I was supposed to get out in March of 2003 or something like that, and and my course date for the academy, for the Secret Service Academy, I think was April or May. I can't remember what the cycle was at the time. And so anyway, my thing was all planned out, and the stop loss, when the stop loss goes on until they decide they're not going to have stop loss anymore. There's no laws that say, hey,
that means, just so our listeners know, it means you can't get out.
you can't get out,
Just
you
so our
can't CS, you
listeners
can't do
understand.
anything.
Right.
You can't go anywhere. So,
Right.
But there are exceptions. And me, I already signed a deck statement. So I couldn't be promoted. I couldn't receive awards. I couldn't do anything with it. I'm just there as an instructor now, waiting my time to get out of the Army. Because I already turned down promotion, I turned down everything. So, but they still kept me. And I'm like, yeah, I got a job going, can you let me out or hell, send me over? And it's like, nope, screw you, man. Because at the time, my leadership, my senior leadership, my immediate leadership, they're still friends of mine. But my, at the battalion level and above, they're like, no, you're a quitter. Because at the time, they're like, you can't, people come to SF and they stay there until they retire.
Right.
Some guys retire when they're forced to retire. Some guys don't ever want to get out,
Right.
Stop loss was great for a lot of guys because now the decision was taken from them. They didn't have to. They're like, they're going to retire. And like, man, I haven't planned for this. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is all I've known and stuff like that. And stop loss was like, oh, man, that's bullshit. I got stop loss. I'm going to have to stay. So, yeah, so you had a lot of guys in that category. And some guys were brought back from retirement, came back in, right?
Wow.
They brought a lot of guys in from retirement, actually.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure they did on the SEAL side of the house and stuff like that. I'm sure a lot across the spectrum of special ops.
Yeah.
They're snatching guys that were doing whatever jobs and saying, hey, when you retire, you're not really no longer able to serve. You're just like, okay, we don't need you anymore, but if we do need you, we're going to bring you back.
Right.
And so that's what happened. A lot of these
Actually, the last show we just had, we had Randy Beitenheimer on the show who trained Special Forces, and he said he loves conspiracy theories. He's like, they're so entertaining. And and he said one of the things is when he's talking to someone in the CIA, and he said, we monitor every SF person that leaves.
Yeah.
He goes, they're trained killers, and we want to be monitoring them at all times. Every 6 months, we check up on them, see what's going on. And he goes, technically, it's like you can always come back, like in a way, as long as you're able to, But he goes, but we monitor them too because now we have these trained killers. It's disorganized, but you organize them together. We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, generally, personality-wise, we are anti-establishment types. A lot of us are.
Yes.
Not all of us. Some people are super happy to toe the line, but then you have those that rage against the machine. I was definitely one of those, and still am. And I think it's just, you probably do have to keep a wrap on them because, when you say not to get into any kind of, overthrowing any governments or anything, because it's not. I mean, I don't know any SF guy that is not 100% dedicated to the Constitution. Not one. So when you see things that happen that are anti-constitutional or against the Constitution, that's why that Second Amendment's in there. And I think all those guys all of us kind of look at it that way. That's why there is a Second Amendment.
Right.
We're supposed to have guns because when a tyrannical government gets off track, we help put it back online, right? Now, I'm not advocating any of that. And so theoretically, that's kind of the way it works. And that's the mentality for a lot of us.
Yes. And when we were talking about that, he was saying, they monitor because it's just like, and for you, what you just mentioned, like, it's like, you can re-enlist, you can come back, if you left. And a lot of people did through 9/11. Actually, I think a couple, I guess, on the show did that. So how was it for you, though, mentally to, now you just lost what you just went 2 years to go through this training. Man, I was looking forward to it.
That was a bitter pill, man. I was so damn pissed off at the time.
And there was no going back.
I could have gone back. I could have had it removed. And I actually looked at...
like, you couldn't have postponed, like, been like, hey, I'm not getting up. I
rescinded my my declaration statement, my God, I can't remember the declination statement. So I could have rescinded that any time. And then I would have been able to go, I would have just gone back to a team and done whatever, stuff like that. I would have been a little behind as far as promotions goes, but I didn't give a shit about promotions anyway. All I really cared about was just being a Green Beret.
Right.
That's all I wanted, man.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't do that because I was still like, screw you guys. And plus, at the time, look at it at the time. So I'm 7th Group, South and Central America. This war is going on in Afghanistan and Iraq. In Afghanistan at that time, by 2002, late 2002, early 2003, it's kind of like a dead ember. I mean, it's mostly taken care of, right? Why we're still there at that time seemed kind of weird. We already went in there, smacked these guys around. We didn't find bin Laden. He's going to pop up eventually. And it's not like he's a mastermind planner or anything. He's a figurehead, It's not like he's the one figuring, oh, yeah, Ahmed's going to get the plane and do this. No, man, he wasn't that guy. Sure. So we caught him. So for, hold on, I lost my track. Here for a second.
You were in 7th?
Yeah, so 7th Group was not. We did one rotation. 2-7 went over for one rotation in Afghanistan. And then the Iraq thing happened. And I was in Brazil when Iraq happened. We were working with the Special Forces down there. Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing on CNN International was like, I thought we were going to come back and Iraq was going to own America. I thought we were losing the war. It's not like we were getting our asses kicked. They're talking about the highway of death for Americans and all this other crap. I mean, come back. We're only there for 2 weeks. Come back and the war's over. And it's like, holy shit, man. So now we're going in and doing whatever, but you have plenty of forces for that. Once again, they're not going to use 7th Group for it. So for me, I didn't see any reason for it to go stay in.
Right.
The war's basically over at this point.
Right.
It wasn't in our AOR anyway. And so I got out. I was like, screw it, and got out. And that thing didn't work. The the Secret Service part didn't happen because they didn't have waivers at the time. I turned 37 in January of 2004, and the next class was like March of 2004. So I was 2 months missed it, right, if I remember right.
And you didn't have a backup after that, though?
Well, my backup was like contracting. I had gone through an anti-terrorism assistance program with State Department, and when I was still active duty, went to a training thing with them up in over at Blackwater, actually, in Virginia Beach, and Moyock, but we stayed in Virginia Beach. And cool course. All it was just going around and shooting and teaching, and how the State Department wants you to teach. So I had that to fall back on, and that's actually what I ended up doing. I ended up becoming a contractor with State Department. I had another job when I first got out. It sucked. It didn't. It was office. I was in an office. And we were standing up.
Well, that's hard.
Yeah. 8 hours in an office.
Truly hard. For the being going from where you were to office, that's challenging.
You could do 16 hours on a range, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Even in summer or winter, well, winter sucks a little bit, but you can still do 16 hours, not a big deal. 8 hours in an office, it's just, fluorescent lights, no window. Yeah. You're just sitting there in front of a computer. What do you know how I'm going to do with a computer? I was an 18 Bravo. I'm a gene away from throwing my poop at it, man. I don't know anything about goddamn computers. So to me, it was just terrible. And I did that for about 4 months until finally I realized I was being grotesquely underpaid. The guy they fired before I got there was a retired 06 from the Navy. They fired him because he was lazy and incompetent. And, but he was making $140,000 a year. I came in there paying me $75 a year. At the time, I didn't know $75 a year wasn't that much. This is DC. So I was like, and I realized, man, I was making more money as an NCO in the Army than I am now. This is bullshit. My paying doubled, but I'm making less. Doesn't make any sense. So that's when I called up the State Department guys and said, hey, I'd like to come on now. And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. 2 weeks later, I was in Colombia making $600 a day. I then ended up in Iraq at $800 a day. So I was in Iraq, did all that and then I was in contracting. Honestly, I dedicated myself to contracting from 2004 till essentially about 6 months ago. So I did contracting this entire time.
So let me ask you, you've done so much. Like, in terms of like wanting to be the Green Beret, going 18 Delta, failing the course, taking these menial jobs, going, I mean, your life, I'll never repeat it. And, but like, how, like, I just know for myself, like, I am in the entrepreneurial life, which is just the unknown. It's like there is no plan, right? Wide open. And for you, like, you had, until you completely got your Green Beret, right? It was just your interview. It's a job interview the whole entire time. Then you get it. And then it's like, okay, like you have a paycheck, you have a job, you know what you're doing. Then you have to also, but that's not forever. It's like a, like an athlete, they only have a certain time.
You got a shelf life.
Yes, you have a shelf life. And then you have to think about something else. And then when you go into civilian life, it's a totally different world. People have a totally different mindset. How do you mentally adjust to something like that?
So I did
to this world.
My first couple of months out, and it's kind of funny because the people I worked with in my section of the company were all SF guys. All my leadership, actually. My former group commander was there, great guy, Ed Phillips. My former team sergeant, Joe Crane, was there. So I hope nobody reminds me of using their names. I don't know, man. You can always edit. But they, so all these dudes I was working with were really good guys. I liked it. I hated the work. I don't mind the work that we were doing. We're going out to Grand Coulee Dam and doing an assessment of what the vulnerabilities are and then standing up the SWAT teams for it to protect it because prior to that, nobody protected it really. And so that part was cool. But you always came back. Now I'm back in the D.C. bubble. I get to work at 7. I leave at 3. It takes an hour and a half to get home, even though I live 12 miles away. It's like you did that general grind and having there's no, I don't know, there's no buzz at the end of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It's not really accomplishing anything. You're surviving now. All I'm doing, now I'm an office monkey, and I'm going to hopefully get a pay raise next month, or, and maybe that'll be 4%. Who knows? And yeah, I'm not really doing anything of substance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think most of us are driven by certainly most SF guys and soft guys are driven by something. It's not that I want to make a lot of money and light my cigars with $100 bills and Scrooge McDuck and dive into my swimming pool full of money. That's not it at all. I want to be part of something bigger than myself. And I think that's always a very big, I think that's a big draw. I'd rather make no money and be involved in something important than make a shit ton of money and really just kind of exist.
So how did you get
I do want the money, by the way.
and the mindset of finding a passion again and helping people and all that stuff, like, how did you get to that?
Let me tell you, the most relevant I've ever been in my entire life was when I was at Asymmetric Warfare Group. So I was a contractor at AWG for about 4 years. And their job is basically, what we were doing was foreign internal defense for our own forces. So what you do in Special Forces, your real job as a Green Beret is you're not up there to be, a super badass killer. You're there to be, we train armies. We build insurgencies or we stop insurgencies. We're part of the bigger picture. We're a force multiplier. It's an important job. So when I went to AWG, and I couldn't believe I got hired there too, because the guys I worked with, they were there, were on another level. They were all super squared away. I mean, some of these guys were complete assholes. They're nobody you sit down and have a drink with. Some of them, but a lot of them, but they're very, very proficient. And that they were Delta. Most of them were Delta guys. There were a lot of SF guys there too. But I didn't know anybody there that was incompetent, not on the contractor side. And what we were doing was incredibly important. We saw exactly what happens. I mean, you go out and work with the unit. You're either going to do two things, at least my rotations in Iraq. You're going to work with a good unit in a bad area or a bad unit in a bad area. But you're always going to be in a bad area. So you're always in a place where a lot of people are getting killed or blown up or whatever, right? And it depends on the kinds of units you're working with. But the whole time we're there, we're assisting them and hopefully saving a lot of lives, or our guys' lives, and because we're preventing some of the risks that they're putting themselves in front of. A lot of our guys would come up with the concepts on, well, vehicle's on fire and you got the combat door locked. Well, how do you get that door locked to save these guys' lives? Because we had multiple instances where the entire crew burned alive when they could have gotten out. And watching that is one of the worst things you'll ever see. And so how do we get these doors off? There's a Frag 5 door that weighs, 400, 500, 600 pounds, and it's held on by a couple of bolts. Well, how do we get those bolts off? Because a lot of this stuff is plastic inside and will melt. So these guys, even with their quick release harnesses, can't get out because a lot of them were wrapped in plastic, cables wrapped in plastic that would cinch up and you couldn't get out of it anyway. So there was a lot of learning aspects to this. The whole thing in Iraq was a big learning experience because you had guys that are used to walking on the ground doing infantry stuff now are tied up in an 1151 up-armored Humvee, where you're basically doing, if you're not the driver or the commander or the top gunner, you're a combat tourist. You're looking through a window that's that thick at the rest of the world. And if you're taking fire from this side, I can't get out on this side. I'd have to fall over a bunch of 50 cow cans, this guy's legs, and the other dude on the other side of me to get out of the vehicle. So it changed a lot of methodologies for us, I think. And I think we're very relevant. I think SF guys and Delta guys in particular are super relevant in sharing their vast amounts of knowledge with the big Army. And our job at the time at AWG was to change the culture of the Army, to turn it into more of a learning organization. And if you look at Delta early in the war, they were still doing the same stuff they had trained the whole time for, which is kick in door, kill the threats, save the hostage. Well, now there's no hostage. Now it's just bad guys. And Uday and Kusei, when they were holed up in their building, Delta lost a lot of guys in that. Not killed, but wounded to the point where you're not replacing that guy. You spent millions of dollars of training this dude, and we're going to capture Saddam's kids? Who the hell cares? We don't need them. What do they know that we're not going to figure out anyway? We got computers and all the other forensics and stuff like that. We're going to figure out what they did anyway. We don't need to save them or not capture them. They're fine dead. And you're better off having them dead anyway. They'd be fat and happy down in Gitmo now, you know? So they learned a hard lesson on that. And just talking to that, this isn't my own outside opinion. This is what I learned from their guys that were literally on there whose careers were ended because they took serious wounds. So their thing was now, how do you stop the Army from doing this stuff? Do you really need to go into that build? You probably don't. Why don't we cordon it off and call them out? The tactical call out. And have them give up. If they don't want to give up, drop a JDAM on it. I don't care if anybody comes out of their mind. Doesn't matter. Nobody in there knows anything. You're just a threat. So we'll give you an option to come out and live, or we're just going to kill you where you are. And none of our guys are going to die in the process. So it's things like that that we were establishing and taking to that Sofit had learned and developed. And now we're taking a lot of those things and giving them to the big Army. And some of them were good at it and some of them weren't, but at least they were getting the information. So the information flow is very important. AWG was a very important organization. Now it doesn't exist. So,
No.
Yeah, they got rid of it.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
So you do all this work, right? And you have this purpose, it's identity, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to but then you lose all that, right? It's all gone, and you have to like reinvent yourself. And you are right now. I mean, you just moved to a whole new state, right? Yeah. New company, new everything, and it's like, how hard is it for you to readjust, and what steps do you take to make that adjustment easier for yourself?
So, at the end of the war, the contracts that were coming down were less and less, anything you want to be involved with. And it was just no drive to do this stuff as far as I was concerned. So when I left contracting, I was actually asked to leave because I got into some arguments with some of the people I worked with at DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. And you start working with guys that are much lower tier than the people you worked with before. You're starting to see, because all our guys, they're retired, man. They're going to go start their own business. They're going to get out of the game. They're done. They're out. So you don't have access to these guys anymore. And what you have now is kind of like the low-hanging fruit that are doing these jobs. And I don't care you a damn if any of you guys here didn't like it. I couldn't go us. I'm in Myrtle Beach now, so sorry. So anyway, so making that jump from going from the contractor side to the entrepreneurial side, because my wife and I are part of a franchise now. We do restoration work. I won't use the name because I'm not sure how our company feels about it.
Okay.
Especially with all the crap I've talked. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. So I won't talk about it. But so we started up this thing, or bought into this franchise. My job is business development, marketing, and emergency responding. And it's awesome. I interact with people all day long. So I met you.
Yeah.
I go to these little conferences, these little get-togethers. There's an after-hour tonight I'm going to go to.
Be there.
And it's fun talking to people because it's like, okay, so what do you do? Oh, you do this and this and this. And what do you do? I do this and this and this. And you start building those relationships, because this is the South. You got to build relationships in order to create any kind of business. And but it's interesting dealing with them in the first place, where they came from. A lot of people from New York and New Jersey, by the way. And it's it's actually good because the people that escaped New York and New Jersey, essentially. So you get to talking to them, and you're developing your business, and you're bringing a lot of them in on with us. Like I'm part of a greater business network down here, And there's also like BNI and all these other organizations that you can join where you're mutually helping each other. So the sky's kind of the limit for us. And for what we do for restoration is that, I mean, we're someone's house burned down or someone's flooded or something like that. We're there to help. Now, we're there to make money too. We're there for, this is a business. But at the end of the day, it's like you're doing the best you can to make sure they get everything they deserve to make sure that house gets back to 100% of what it was. So it's still helping people.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds kind of goofy. It's like
No.
I just want to help people.
No,
If you want to be relevant.
Yes, you want to be relevant. You want to have this passion. I mean, the civilian mindset is very different from the SF mindset, and also that you're dealing with people on an everyday basis now. And like you just said, in the South, it's all relationship based. So you actually have to, get to know people, right? And also, the mindset is very different, and I just, from me, like going from Long Island to Los Angeles, and I lived there for 10 years, and then coming to Myrtle Beach, I had no idea that, like, I thought Los Angeles was loose. I thought they were chill and laid back and, flaky. And then I come here and I'm just like, oh my God, this is next level, right? And I come from Long Island where it's like, you say you're going to do something, you go, like we are doers. I mean, when I moved to LA, I was told on 3 jobs, I was pulled into the office to say, hey, why don't you take some breaks and take it easy, making everyone look bad. And I go, I thought I was doing the bare minimum. Like, just different mindsets. And you come down here and it's like, they really don't show up. Like, I hired someone to do the bathroom and I was like, he was like 10 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, 10 o'clock comes and I'm like, and now it's like almost 11 and it was day 1. And I'm like, is he going to show up? And so I call and I go, hey, you on your way? He goes, yeah, I'm on my way. I told you 10 o'clock. I go, I know, that's why I'm calling. It's almost 11. And he goes, that's essentially the same time. And I go, 2 totally different times, bro. Like, what do you mean? So it's interesting down here. And it's interesting adjusting from where you came from, the world you came from.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Matata, man. Yeah. This is like totally, yeah, it's not like that. It's kind of weird because, the world, I came from a very similar world. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late.
You're late.
So it's people that are like 30 minutes late and they're on time. And it's like, no, man, it doesn't work that way.
And it's hard.
It does here.
For you, like, it is hard for, for myself. I know, like, if I was to adopt that mindset, that might, like, then I'm going to always be late. I do it once and then you do it a second time and then you do it a third time. And then suddenly you're that person that's unreliable, and I never want to subscribe to that. Then I want to keep those standards. And I'm sure for someone like you, it's like, I keep these, I say I'm going to do, like you said, Friday nights. I say I'm going to be here Friday night and, join me or not join me, but I'm going to show up.
Well, at least going to call and say I won't be there.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's like, no, this is not going to show. Oh, we're good. That was a good idea 2 weeks ago, but I'm not going to do it now. Now that the plans actually come to fruition, now I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So,
but I like it. I tell you, I'd rather be here than DC any day of the week.
Yeah.
I miss that place. I don't miss my farm, but I don't miss anything else about it. There's a lot. My wife and I are very happy down here.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I do like it as well. It's
a little hot though, man. I tell you, the humidity is badass. I thought I was really good at it. I lived in jungles for a long time. And I'm old and I got out of shape for it, man. Because I tell you, this last couple of months kicked my ass. And oh my God, this is
you came right at the humidity, But so I ask all my guests, the final question I ask everybody is, what do you have for our listeners, myself, to do on an everyday basis to strengthen our mindset or to tap into untapped potential?
I think you got, okay, so I'm 57 and still get up and go to the gym every day. I think you've got to always push yourself physically and mentally to, it doesn't have to be hard. It's not like you're going to read, Homer or something like that, or
not
any of the classics.
Rock.
Yeah, but you should always be involved with something physical and mental. And with me, the mental side of the house is engaged in is talking to people. So, I mean, I talk a lot here, but this is because I'm getting interviewed. In a normal conversation, I try to listen twice as much as I talk. And I think that's probably a really good one, especially for SF guys. Some of us, especially the extroverts, don't talk so much, listen a lot more, do active listening. And on the physical side of the house, especially for you military types that get out and stuff like that, don't turn into a fat ass. Don't, you got to take care of your body, man. You represent, like, I see myself, even though I was a very average SF guy, I see myself as a representative of SF, and I always will. So when I do something stupid or something wrong, something like that, I take it seriously because I just now made us look like shit. And the same thing is physical. I'm never going to, I don't, well, if I'm ever fat ass, I'm just going to say I was empty or something. but yeah, so I think you should, you always got to stay physical, mental shape. I guess the takeaway, physical, mental shape. Don't quit. Don't retire.
Yeah, don't retire.
Retire, you shouldn't die.
Yeah.
We watch that down here. You've seen it down here.
I see it down. Actually, my dad's kind of going through this transition right now where his whole entire life was his job. He loved his job as electrician. And then he comes down here and it's like, he had no other hobby. He had nothing. Yeah. And then it's like, well, what do I do? And like your first couple of months, you're just contemplating. And then that contemplation turns into another month and another month and another month. And then all of a sudden you're putting on weight and then you're getting lethargic. And then it's like, there's a reason why they say in the blue collar jobs when they retire, they have like a 14-month shelf life.
Yeah.
They go, is that I'm seeing it. And I just keep going to my dad. I'm like, you got to get to February to beat this 14 months.
Well, my mom's 87 and she'll get like 4 tons of pea gravel brought to her house and she lays it all out herself. My mom's hard as hell. Super nice woman. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met, but she's tough.
My mom's like that too. Like, we'll go away. We'll do 20 miles, she's intense. Yeah. And she's the one that has the energy to do it. She goes, let's go. My dad, totally different. And it's just like, and I see it from both sides. I see one really active, has the energy and the passion and the drive to just live. And the other one's like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know where to go. And I think that's the most dangerous spot to be in.
Yeah. Oh, it's like you say, always have a plan.
Always.
So
and you had that. You had that right away. Yes, and then something happened, but like you had a plan, and I find it really interesting because I do talk to some SF guys that they forget about the plan, or they think about it, but then it's like reality comes, and then it's just like, oh.
Yeah, it didn't work out the way.
It didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to, we always taught that 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is not. And pace. Primary, alternate, to mercy. Yeah. You gotta have a pace plan for
phase for everything.
How mundane it is.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you gonna eat for dinner tonight? Well, I'm gonna do this. And that's tomorrow I'm gonna do this. Well, no, I don't want to do this instead. Yeah. So you always have some kind of a plan, even if it's a bad plan. A bad plan is better than no plan.
Yeah, well, that's your that's your emergency. Yeah. But thanks so much for being here. This was so fun that they've never done the in-person.
We'll do some drinks next time.
Yeah. I appreciate you being on the show. And everyone that is watching or listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, give us a rating, and become a Patreon member so you get access to our bonus episodes that only our Patreon members get. And I appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you all, or you'll listen next week on the show.